on America. Breaking barriers.
Welcome to Breaking Barriers. I am Dino Moore. My co-host Kimberly K is on the way, so I'm going to get started without her. If some of you guys remember, let's go all the way back, and I'm old as you know, to 1980s. There was an initiative to better community policing, and McGruff the Crime Dog was created. And if you guys remember those little ads that brought to you by the Ad Council, and McGruff would tell you guys to take a bite out of crime and talk to you about turning your lights on a timer when you leave your house so no one breaks in, and walking in pairs to school and all that good stuff, which was a great campaign. Well, McGruff is sort of being updated and brought into the new century, the woke generation. Not quite the woke generation, but he's being brought anew and rebranded, and we will be talking to my guest Paul Del Ponte about all of that and talk about where McGruff is going and what we got to look forward to. We're going to be breaking some barriers with him today. I'm going to bring my guest in. This is Paul Del Ponte.
Hi, Dino. Great to be with you.
Hey, Paul. How are you, sir?
Doing wonderfully here.
Great. So let's go back to the beginning. McGruff. Apparently, there was a need for the information that McGruff brought to us because, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, so I was growing up in the 80s, going to school, going out into the neighborhoods on my own at that time, and so McGruff, he talked to me, I guess, more than even my parents. Is that right? Was that the aim back then?
The aim back then was people looked at what was going on in the 70s and they said, okay, we have rising crime rates, we have racial tensions, we have distrust of the police, and we have this feeling among many people that you can't trust institutions in general. So that was in the 70s. And I like to say that's why McGruff was created, to break through some of that in a way that there was this safe character that people could trust that could talk about these tough issues in a way that brought people together rather than divide them. And so I like to say we're at another McGruff moment. And one of the reasons we're bringing McGruff back big time is because of those situations. And I like to say if McGruff wasn't invented, I'd want to invent him now.
Okay.
So that's a little bit of the history back then and a little bit of why we're making a big effort to bring him back.
Okay. Well, I'm guessing you guys were very successful because, if you line up any 10 people in a room and ask them if they know McGruff or just show the picture, they know who McGruff is. So it was very successful, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. We actually did little market research on that. And it's probably about, if you line up 10 people in a room, 8 of them will know and remember McGruff, which is very high.
Okay.
It's up there with knowing Michael Jordan.
Wow. I think McGruff might be more popular than Michael Jordan. I don't know. He's the take a bite out of crime thing, the cool trench coat with the high collars, man. He was almost as I wore my Lando Calrissian shirt because he kind of looks like McGruff with the collar.
Yeah.
That is like very, very identifiable. But so McGruff was around. He got really big in the 80s, and at the same time, the president's wife was telling people, say no to drugs.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a smart way to go. Did McGruff have the same message, or was it somewhat different?
A little different. I think during that whole time period, just say no to drugs became so large, anybody around sort of got wrapped up into it. McGruff never was a spokesperson for just say no.
Hmm.
There were many things in which McGruff spoke out against drugs. The face of the drug problem in the U.S. 40 years later has changed.
Hmm.
Marijuana is decriminalized in most states to some degree or another. But we have, within the last year, this problem with fentanyl, which is now quickly becoming the number one killer in many communities of teenagers.
Definitely. So
And it's a very different problem.
yeah, I want to get to that in a second, but let me ask you this: was drugs McGruff's primary concern, or were other crimes prevalent
No.
in his scope?
McGruff's primary concern at the beginning and today is preventing crime from a broad community-based perspective. That crime happens because we give it a chance. Let's not give it a chance. And there are many factors that go into that. And I like to equate, many years ago, Mr. Rogers said, especially when talking to children, when times get tough, when things get scary, look for the helpers. McGruff is always identified as a helper, especially when we communicate with children and young people. The key to reaching young people, especially teenagers today, is you got to relate to them on their level, things that they understand and can relate to. And we're very careful to do that across the board, because if you don't do that, if you either talk down to kids, they're going to tune you out very quickly. And if you try to sound too smart and try to say things that just overwhelm them or not in their realm of reality, you're going to lose them. And the important thing about communicating, and that's really McGruff's claim to fame, is the ability to communicate tough issues in a way that brings people together. And the key to that is to cut through a lot of the clutter and a lot of the chatter that surrounds crime issues. If you are reading, the headlines, and especially if you're watching local news, you're going to get scared. It's they're reporting about crime as it's happening in the most dramatic criminal incidents that are out there in any city. So that's what makes the news. The average crime doesn't make the news, and those are the greatest numbers of crimes that happen. The car break-ins, those things, not insignificant, but they're not going to make the 11 o'clock news.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you open, you said that McGruff was created like in the 70s, where there was racial tension, there was distrust of the police. That thing sounds an awful lot like
Back to the Future.
It's weird. It sounds like today, and I'm thinking, and I'm wondering here, because right now we have parents talking to their children.
Yes.
And they say, if a police officer asks you something, your first instinct and the first thing you should think about is surviving the encounter. There's this distrust of police. Like, they're the enemy. We have to fear them. McGruff, I believe, is still a friendly face. Are there some initiatives in place or in the future that are going to help try and bridge that gap and bring people back into line with trusting the police? I mean, I know there's some legal measures that have to come through, with the way police are trained and everything like that. But is he doing his part in either working with the police to help create trust, or working with school children to trust law enforcement?
Absolutely. We have a very large program going on right now that is aimed at bringing the police and community closer together. We have a public service announcement which is running on television now, which features a police officer, a woman, an African American woman. She is having breakfast without uniform, with her kids rushing off to work. It's a multiracial family. She gets in the car. She's driving to work, and she's talking about the community. It's a good community. Yeah, there's crime. We got to do something about that. And the key is police have to work with the community, and the community has to work with the police. Then she proceeds to go into a police station. She goes to her locker, and then lo and behold, she's a police officer herself. That is accompanied by an email marketing campaign where something that didn't exist when McGruff came out in the 80s. People can email McGruff directly and get tips on how to work closely, how the community can work more closely with the police and vice versa, because you can't have public safety without public involvement.
Yes, definitely. JD for USA says, what I heard is that McGruff was starting to help people of color trust cops, but that was ages ago. Is that close to being true? I mean, was it targeted primarily at people of color, or was it just a broad spectrum thing?
Interestingly enough, it was not targeted that way, but McGruff does cut across barriers, but where he is the most popular tends to be in a lot of urban communities, African American communities. Why that is, I think part of it is because McGruff talks about things in a way that are real for people. It's not always this battle between the police and the community. If you go to, I'm in Washington, D.C. The police chief is African American. I would imagine a majority of the officers in D.C. are African American. So, it's not necessarily, they don't, most people don't see it as an us versus them dichotomy. I think people see a bad cop and they know a bad cop. But everybody wants their neighborhood, their community to be safer. And you want good policing. You don't want no policing. You want good policing. Everyone wants good policing.
Constance, my son is 14. They still had McGruff up until the 5th grade in school. I don't think McGruff has gone anywhere at all, Constance. He's still around. But he did seem to fade for a while. Was that intentional, or was there a shift in something there in corporate there? What happened there?
A number of things have happened. I think part of it, one thing that people don't realize that happened is the way policing started changing in the U.S. post 9/11.
Okay.
That a lot of funding was shifted away from crime prevention and community involvement, community outreach, and was put into preparedness. We need an urban assault vehicle in every community in Iowa. And why, I don't know, but so I think a unintended consequence of that was a lot of departments were stretched. We still have about 2,000 McGruffs out there around the country doing education in schools. Some school districts have more active programs than others. So depending where you live, I know that if you were in DC, New York, or LA, it's hard to graduate from public schools without having had McGruff appear in your life at least once, maybe more. In other cities, they don't have a program, so it's not universal.
Okay, and in around the 9/11 thing, the face of police changed, right? The way they even looked. Am I correct about that?
You are correct. Uniforms changed. I think part of it was 9/11. Part of it was fear of police themselves being victims of violent crime. I think there were some good changes to that. I think it makes sense for police to have bulletproof vests. But the whole look of the uniform, the amount of equipment they carry on their belts, it gives a different impression to the public. And in my view, it's all the more important why the police need to have positive interactions with the communities.
Yes.
They need to be in the classroom with McGruff standing there so the kids aren't afraid.
Yeah.
They need to be at the playground, at the boys and girls clubs, in all those likely and unlikely places. And more importantly, where kids are spending most of their time now is online.
Hmm.
And we cannot forget that. And McGruff is very active on every social media platform. We just launched him on TikTok a few months ago, and you got
Okay.
to see that dude dance.
Is he going to be dancing? Is he?
He
Is he?
dances, man. You got to see it. You got to
Okay.
see
All
it.
right.
But one reason why we're there is that's where kids are, and the other reason why we're there, unfortunately, that's where criminals are too. Not every online site could be called a safe community. In fact, many of them are far from that.
Yeah, I was growing up myself in Washington D.C. By the way, we had in my neighborhood in Southeast D.C. we had community policing,
Mhm.
and our officers had these. They had playing cards for the Washington Redskins, the Georgetown Hoyas, and they called them officer friendly. And
Okay.
we run up to officer friendly, and at some point McGruff came around, and we kind of equated him to officer friendly. But just like you said, 9/11 happened, right? Now you
Yep.
go to the subways and there's police officers there with assault rifles,
Yep.
and it was different.
Yep.
It was very, very different. My daughter, who is in law enforcement in Washington D.C. as well, um, has told me what has changed in her eyes is that police officers don't walk a beat anymore. Like they don't walk through the neighborhoods the way they used to, where they know everybody, they communicate with everybody. And I think that communication part of it is something that's created the mistrust that has happened between the police officers. And, because if you don't know someone, how can you trust them?
That's exactly right. And it's we like to say, well, who's to blame? No one's to blame. Blame doesn't get putting blame on someone, be it the police or be it the community, doesn't get you anywhere.
Mhm.
The only thing that gets you is more tension. The thing you're trying to get rid of. So you don't want to cast blame. You want to look for solutions. Um, uh, you want to look for the helpers out there. And McGruff is a helper.
Yes, well, here's the thing. Well, let's see. It says targeted the younger kids, teach them, and my son did junior police program, and they had McGruff there. That's wonderful. That is wonderful. Was McGruff involved in a lot of those little cadet programs around the country?
A lot of those. Some communities have what they call citizen police academies.
Hmm.
There are some, and again, it varies depending where you live. Some communities have very active programs, others don't. But you can get a nice little badge for the kid that they get a thrill on with McGruff, and the materials are done in an age appropriate way,
Hmm.
and we need more of that. In that, I think the other issue too that came about is to why you didn't see as much of McGruff. Severalfold. There was a period of time when the ad council dropped out of the picture, and there was a thought that maybe McGruff had run his course. And so, in terms of a McGruff public service announcement on television, there has been about a 10-year gap, which we have made great strides in getting rid of this year.
Okay.
So we've got McGruff back on the airwaves. We've got McGruff on social media. This weekend, we're going to have McGruff in a car premiere and debut at Daytona on the NASCAR circuit.
Nice.
McGruff is going to be back in a big way.
Let me ask you this. Right around the time was like the Clinton administration, this thing called the internet took off.
Yeah,
With that came its own set of issues.
absolutely.
Cyberbullying, people getting on there wanting to target meet children. Has McGruff taken some steps to stop that kind of action of cyberbullying in their campaign to help cyberbullying?
Well, funny you should bring that up. McGruff coined the term cyberbully.
Really?
Yes, he did. McGruff has always been ahead of his time. We are very active online, and we view, like I said, we work to create safe communities, and not every online community is a safe community. The internet is a wonderful thing. It brings people closer together. I've got a friend who is a ALS patient sufferer right now, and there's a wonderful ALS community online that he's part of, and that's a wonderful thing. But not every online community is like that. There are drug dealers, there are child abductors, there are people who are trying to do sex crimes and other harmful things online, and increasingly they can hide easier. The very first McGruff commercial was McGruff going into this house. The door was unlocked. He's there with his flashlight, and he talks about keeping the lights on. What is a criminal? What was the one thing a criminal doesn't want? It's to be noticed. And we have created these online communities where not only is it easy for criminals to hide, but they can literally disappear. They can make a drug transaction, and with some of the newer platforms like Snapchat and others, there's no record of it. There's no trace.
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember the take a bite out of crime, and only you can, you can take a bite out, you can help, blah, 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 blah. What's the message for the online stuff? Like someone who gets on there and someone tries to talk to them, if they hear McGruff in their head, what's the message McGruff is saying is about like meeting strangers online?
Well, we talk about that. We also focus on what is the biggest crime going on online right now, and that is the sale of fake products. And a lot of people view it as, oh, they're picking up a cheap Gucci purse or something that looks like a Gucci purse, and there's no harm done. Well, there's another side to that. There is a vast global criminal enterprise in manufacturing and selling fake products. It ranges from everything to that Gucci purse to fake car parts, electronics that can blow up in your hands, and most lethal and most deadly of all, fake medical products, and especially fake pills being sold that are laced with fentanyl.
Yes, let's definitely get into that, because in my era, there was the crack epidemic that died down a little bit. We were locking people up for marijuana. That largely is being decriminalized in this, and now we are going through this opioid crisis. And then we hear, oh my God, people are dying from opioids. Is that accurate? Is the opioids what killing people, or is there something more?
The opioid epidemic is an epidemic. In the last 2 years, and particularly even just in the last 9 months, what has skyrocketed is fake pills being sold as an opioid, but contain fentanyl. And to give you and your viewers some idea of how deadly fentanyl is, 2 milligrams. And if you can't imagine what 2 milligrams are, it's a couple sprinkles. If you take a sweetener packet, your average little sweetener packet, one of these guys, if that were fentanyl, that would be enough to kill 500 people.
500.
500 and right here. So it is, some people call it a weapon of mass destruction. And we are taking what I say is too lackadaisical an attitude about stopping it. And the reasons are multifold, but we stopped other things in this country. It takes a will to do it. And right now, I think we're lacking the public awareness of what it is, because it's easy to confuse. Addiction is an issue that has haunted society for decades, centuries, millennia. Yes. And so how to fix that is a big question. And I won't pretend I have the answers. And I think if anybody came on your show and said they had all the answers, they'd be lying to you. But nonetheless, fentanyl is something a little bit different. No one is out buying fentanyl. There's not a teenager who's going online saying, oh, I want to score some fentanyl. No, they're trying to score OxyContin. They're trying to score an ADHD medication that they think will help them perform better on an SAT test. And so the manufacturers of this, largely in China, in facilities that are not safe to manufacture any drug, let alone be handling a substance so lethal as fentanyl. So the chance of an error, imagine 2 little sprinkles. You add a 3rd sprinkle, you're dead. And they're pumping out pills by the thousands in an uncontrolled facility. So about every one of those 50 fake pills will kill somebody. So pretty much in the time that this show is going to be aired, there's a teenager somewhere that the parents have discovered him. They're calling 911, and sadly, chances are 911 is going to get there too late to save him.
Yeah, and the pills aren't the only problem. I've heard of deaths of fentanyl laced marijuana.
Yes,
around the country.
People are putting it in many things that will surprise you. So it is, that's not what the person is intending to buy. So it's not an overdose problem. It's not an addiction problem. It is murder. It is poison.
Okay.
It is poisoning. And we're leading an effort along with a lot of parent groups who have, and when I think of heroes, I think of these parents who saw their child die in front of their eyes, not knowing what was going on, and then only later discovered there was a pill. And they are working to make sure it doesn't happen to another parent. And that is true heroism in selfless action, because these are people who are, have faced the most devastating consequence that any parent could, and they're working to stop it. And we're working with them. Just last week, we had a national Twitter chat on it to involve people. There was the first Fentanyl Prevention Awareness Day. And on October 19th, we are hosting a National Fentanyl Summit in Washington, D.C., where we are inviting the heads of each government agency responsible for it to put them in the same room in front of these parents and explain what they're going to do and how they're going to work together. We don't think the problem is not people are not working on it or aware of the problem. There are a lot of good things happening.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a problem that requires out-of-the-box thinking. It does, business as usual is not going to fix this. We've got to think differently.
So McGruff comes into a 5th grade class now, and he is wanting to talk to him about fentanyl. What's the message? I mean, is there a catchphrase? I mean, how does he get that message across to someone that young about something that could cost them their lives, and also a high schooler as well? How does he deliver that message now in this new era?
We did a lot of research on this, and we are working with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, who's responsible for making sure we don't have fake products out there. And with any issue with any child, you want to look for the point of entry, the things they are familiar with that they can relate to, that upset them. So we have a new ad. Doesn't talk about fentanyl. Fentanyl would scare the bejeebus out of, a 5th grader. To some extent it should, but that's not how you start the conversation. Mm-hmm. So we are there is a fake McGruff who shows up, and kids are playing video games, and one of the kid loses because he bought a fake game controller. Teenagers don't want to lose a video game. So, that relates to them. And then you can start talking about, hey, there are a lot of other things that are fake. That bike helmet you bought, the things that kids are used to. You start there. And then when you have that conversation and you say, all right, you've got a police officer, you've got a McGruff standing there, you might have a counselor, a school nurse, or any number of people who would be impactful to a classroom. And then they say, most of all, promise me one thing. Don't ever buy don't buy any fake pills. Don't buy any things that you think are medicine online. And that, we think, will work. It is, you have to, when the anti-smoking effort took off in the early 1960s, the first signs of success were telling grown-ups, hey, you could die of lung cancer or heart disease if you keep smoking. That made an impact with adults. They tried the same thing with teenagers, and it failed miserably. The same thing that works for adults will not work for teens. Then they started telling teens, well, smoking isn't sexy. You're going to have a hard time getting a date. And so it made it. So teens don't want to be fooled. They don't want to be seen with a fake pair of Nikes on the street.
Mhm.
They don't want to be outed by their friends. So our catchphrase is you're smart, buy smart. Don't be duped. Be a dupe detector, not a dupe. And so it plays on the positive image of a teenager wanting to be smarter than their friends. And we think that we're on the right track. We're getting good traction on it. And I'm very encouraged with the number of people who've come forward to help. I mentioned we're going to have McGruff on a NASCAR. Joey Gassi, the driver, he came forward. He wants to help. He's aware of fake car parts. Imagine putting a pair of fake brake pads on your car. That's an accident waiting to happen. So these fake products, they're everywhere. It's literally everything. Fake cosmetics. This stuff contains things that would gross you out, including animal feces and urine on lipstick. You're putting that in your mouth, and I think those are the kinds of things kids relate to. And then the other thing that kids relate to, and we do, I think, have a very socially conscious generation is now going through our school system. They care about things like animals not being used in products. They care about not having child labor. They care about all these issues that the criminals who are manufacturing and selling these things don't care about. And that is something that kids will respond to. So what we do on this campaign and any other campaign is we look for the point of entry with kids, because that's who you're relating to. If you can't relate, if you're not relating to them, it's not going to work. So you got to talk to them about the things they care about. Even though we care about fentanyl and we don't want to see a child die from it, that's not how you start the conversation with them. That is how we start the conversation with the head of the Drug Enforcement Administration and everyone else who's a grown-up who has to do something about it. And that, they are listening. And that's the good news on this.
Sounds great. It looks like, hold on. Looks like my co-host Kimberly K is here. She may have some tough questions for you ask because she's been known to beat up senior citizens. So let's bring in Kimberly K. Hey, Kim.
Hi. Apologies for the technical difficulties.
Well, glad to have you join us. We've been having a good conversation, and
I was in the back of the studio for a little bit, so I was listening, catching up a little bit. So great to hear the conversation before I joined. And yes, I have been known to beat a few. No, I'm just kidding. I've not done anything. I'm so against any of that. Not happened. So
one of the questions
when McGruff is against elder abuse. So
there you go. One of the questions in the chat was, did McGruff get criticized for his anti-drug campaigns before?
Did McGruff get criticized for his anti-drug campaigns? I am proud to say, and I've only been with McGruff for a little over a year, not one McGruff ad, not one McGruff program has ever been pulled down. Okay. McGruff, like I think a lot of people, we talked about this before in the 80s, there was this Just Say No movement, and it became very popular for about 3 or 4 years, and then people were realizing, it's not really working. It's not really the right message. It was not a message developed by McGruff. McGruff never did a Just Say No ad. But like a lot of people who were around in the 80s, there is that association with it. So there was nothing that McGruff did that ever got pulled. And I think a lot of times, in retrospect, there was a lot of talk about marijuana as a gateway drug. And that is, from what I know about it, is in and of itself a tough issue. I think in every state that has decriminalized it, the age is generally 21 or 18. And from what I understand from child psychologists and development people, the human brain is not fully formed until about age 24. So if you start taking any drug at a young age, it could be considered a gateway drug. Gateway because your mind isn't developed, but I do think that most people have come to the conclusion that marijuana is not a gateway drug in the way that people thought about it. So if you're an adult and it's legal in your state and you use it, you're not going to use it and end up going into something harder. I think we know that. Where you talk about someone who might be 13 and is doing something they're not supposed to, they're engaging in a dangerous behavior pattern that you don't want any 13-year-old to start with. Same as, you don't want them smoking cigarettes either. There are a lot of things you don't want a 13-year-old to start doing.
Can you talk to us about the rebranding efforts? Okay, and we've seen like with the Peanuts cartoons, at one point they looked a certain way and they had a certain charm, and then they redrew them like how they look. Is McGruff? Is he getting the makeover? Is he coming out sleeker in 4K? What are the rebranding efforts?
So over the years, and we're talking a span of more than 2 generations now, there have been different touches in McGruff. He started out being more furrier, and times change. People don't like that as much now. So you see McGruff in a shirt and tie underneath the trench coat. The trench coat stays. That's part of McGruff.
I was gonna say, is the trench coat there? Please don't tell me that they took that away.
No, trench coat is not going to go away. In fact, here's my prediction: trench coats buy stock in London Fog and whoever else makes trench coats, because they're going to make a comeback because McGruff is out there in a big way now. So the big news, and it just started last week. We have a new public service announcement in 60, 30, and 15-second varieties, radio, television, English, and Spanish, with McGruff the Crime Dog in CIG technology 3D animation, with a cast of live action children. We filmed at the Jim Henson Studios out in Los Angeles, and the special effects creations were done by a company called House of Moose, better known for the special effects they did in The Matrix. So this is high production value as you can get. You hopefully will see it on a TV station near you, online, or certainly by visiting our website, ncpc.org.
Oh, wonderful. And you say McGruff has I gotta see this. I gotta see McGruff dancing on TikTok, man. I mean,
You gotta see it. I can't. Describing it doesn't do it justice.
well, you can stand up. And
I won't do it justice.
I mean, he was in what's the movie, the Chippendale
Rescue Rangers.
Yeah, I almost called it Chippendales, like the dancers. I was like,
no,
removing the trench coat, but not that Chippendales. But that's the one most recently. Could I ask a question really quickly?
Sure.
What's the motivation behind resurrecting something that was so controversial? Like, what's the motivation? Not in a negative or positive way, just a question. What was the motivation about bringing him back in a way? Was it because there was some identification where people already knew him, or is it just something that you guys thought you were rebrand and kind of
a
put him back
demand
out?
from parents?
Okay.
Think about what 30, 40 years ago, how old we were then, how old we are now, and where we are in life. We're parents. People remember McGruff from their childhood. And in the last couple of years, we have a generation of children, some call it the Zoom generation, who have had the most upheaval probably of any generation since maybe the World War II Depression generation. They went from going to school every day to all of a sudden sitting in front of a computer, not seeing their friends, being on Zoom, and having that. And we heard from parents after parents. We did a little market research. These are numbers that will drive any politician to envy. 9 out of 10 parents want McGruff to teach their kids about safety. And if that's not a compelling number, I don't know what is. And as I started, on this job a little more than a year ago, I started doing Zoom sessions, talking. And anytime I talked to a parent group, after I was done talking, there was always maybe 2 or 3 parents who'd stay behind, either on Zoom or in person. They come up to me and said, "You got to get McGruff out there. I don't feel safe about my kids on the street. I don't feel safe about my kids online. McGruff's the only one who can do it."
So, follow up. I'm huge into analytics and data studies and things like that for psychology purposes. What would who's the group that you guys are putting out of there? Who are you pulling from? Because a little bit of research I did today is just in a Facebook group that I have of like 40,000 women that are moms like me, myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just, asked do you guys remember McGruff the Crime Dog? Did not get a lot of good feedback. And I'm a mom of an 18 and 19-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a high number. That's
That
a
is a high
staggering number. So
there's another
does that
number
study?
that number is from an aided survey. It is a national sample done by Ipsos Research.
Okay.
There's a lower number that is unaided. So people were asked, "Do you remember McGruff the Crime Dog?" And you'd have about 60% who said yes. Then they were shown a photo or a picture of McGruff,
Yeah.
and they said, "Oh yeah, I remember him."
Yeah. Maybe not the name, but the photo.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay.
But it was
for
the
reference
tough-
purposes for
it
our
was the
listeners,
tough
playback.
factor that really resonated with us as we were thinking it through. And McGruff had never totally disappeared. There were about 2,000 McGruffs across the country doing education in schools and in other youth settings that have never disappeared. He'd not been fully on the airwaves in about 10 years. So we started reintroducing him. You mentioned Chip and Dale, the Rescue Rangers. Before that, The Family Guy in December.
Yeah.
Aired a very cute, well-done episode,
I saw that one.
which, for those who are familiar with the show, there was a dog character on the show, Brian, who claimed to tell the mayor of Quahog that he was the one to help clean up the town. And as proof, he said he was McGruff's assistant. And then they did a redo of one of the old PSAs in which Brian, who was in the PSA, was Sergeant Bark, because he barked out crime. It was very cute. We got an outpouring as soon as the show aired on social media from McGruff fans. It was bring him back. That was the best episode ever. You got to bring him back. That happened. The Rescue Rangers happened. We started teasing him out a little bit more. I was telling Dino earlier about another campaign we have on getting the police and communities to be closer together, in which McGruff makes a little bit of a cameo at the very end of it.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing is we put McGruff on email. And so years ago, when the ads first came out, you wrote to P.O. Box 6000, Rockville, Maryland, for more information. Now you get email McGruff at ncpc.org. You get an email back from McGruff. You can email with technology. You can email McGruff back and forth. And, that was a lot of work because he's a dog and he doesn't have opposable thumbs. So getting him to do email was tough. So
yeah. Well, it's wonderful to hear that you're engaging the parents. I think the nostalgia of our childhood sometimes does come into play when we're raising our own children. We're going back to those things. So I could definitely see where people would be like, it's McGruff, we came to the school and that sort of thing. I did see some comments here that I wanted to kind of speak to that I thought were great. The one was the marijuana is not a gateway drug, but hey, that's what everyone was told back then. I don't think anyone blames the NCPC for that. That came from the Reagan administration. So that was something I was going to mention too, is that was also a heavily political message that was being pushed back then as well. Not a McGruff crime dog agenda.
Yes,
that was sort of a bigger picture. So that's important.
It was a sign of the times, I think.
Yeah. And my son has been listening to podcasts from 10 years ago, and he's been like, wow, like I was just like young back then to see how the world's changed. So just him listening to an old podcast and seeing how the world changes has really been able to teach him that, not everybody's perfect, not everything is perfect. But I think it's great to see you guys kind of stepping forward and saying, this is what, maybe we didn't get it perfect back then, but we're making these steps now to work with the parents. What I would love to see, and then I'll stop interrupting because I know you guys were on for about 25 minutes before I got on, but I I think it's a hard conversation sometimes for parents to have if they don't have the skills to speak to their children, and they don't know what to start with. I run a couple conscious parenting groups and things like that, and they don't know how to start with conversations or how to say the right things. I think it would be great if you had McGruff sort of engaging parents on how to speak to children, not just speaking to children, but maybe having some sit downs or some community events where they could say like, I don't think I can get my 14-year-old to listen to me. Um, how could I do that? And that would make huge waves, I think, in communities and rebuilding and connecting on those levels. So have you guys thought about having sort of any engagement with the parents only on having like how to have a discussion with your kids about drugs and things going forward?
Yes, we have. We are planning a few things to hit the issue at multiple levels. And
Yeah.
I think that is something that I've tried to do more and more since I've come on board in the last year, because just one single note public education doesn't work on these tough issues. There are multiple players involved. Parents are involved. Community leaders are involved. Elected officials, appointed officials, police, others. And so to bring everybody closer together, there are a lot of people who want to help, and that's the good news. And I think it's our responsibility to keep coming up with new and creative ways when someone comes forward and says, I want to help, to be able to answer that call. And it's harder and harder. Remember back when McGruff was created, there were 3 TV networks. There was no internet. There was no Fox News. There were, a lot of things that we have today didn't exist. So, some of the first McGruff PSAs aired on Dallas. Well,
Yeah.
70, 60 million people tuned in each week to watch Dallas. So you were getting that many people all at once. Those days are gone and they're never coming back. So, it's harder and harder to reach people. So you have to think more and more creatively. That was a big impetus, obviously. The obvious spot was to get McGruff on social media. And I like to say the reason for that is twofold. One, that's where kids are. And number
Yeah.
two, increasingly and unfortunately, that's where the criminals are. And if the criminals are there, McGruff, the crime dog, needs to be there.
I think that having conversations with the children, with kids would be great for that, for social media, any sort of live where they can ask questions, because we do have a lot of communities where kids can't ask their parents, or parents are, busy trying to take care of the home and make sure that they're being fed and doing all of the other things that sometimes these topics do kind of slip through the cracks, or maybe they're not comfortable talking to their parents. So I think if done right, that would be a really great thing to see McGruff having, Instagram lives or TikTok live or something where he's answering questions from the appropriate age of kids. I would hope
Absolutely.
not to see a 6-year-old on, TikTok these days. I pray not often to see that young a child, but if they're going to be there, it would be great to have those conversations, because I think a lot of children are in places like myself is a good example growing up. I did not feel safe where I was. I was in a place of just like, I'm around things that are not going great. Didn't feel comfortable talking to my parents about some of these topics. So when we would have these outreach programs at school, those were amazing places for me to sort of ask questions and be educated. So now that social media has become that medium, it's very exciting to hear that you guys are going to be putting forth the effort to have him in front of the kids and teens in those
Absolutely.
regards. Oh.
What we need to do first step is introduce McGruff to that generation. We've you pointed out a few things on your own. The average age of somebody watching Rescue Rangers is hitting preschool to early elementary school. Family Guy a little older. Our PSA is being targeted right at teens and tweens. Our social media effort is targeted to teens and tweens. So it will be a few more months before they get a little more comfortable with McGruff, and then we start rolling out some of the very things you're describing.
Awesome.
Kim, you want to go to the comment? It's I'll post it,
Yeah.
but there it is. Yeah, because that's a big one.
Yeah. So Kermit P says, I'm going to ask the hard question. Kids are often at most danger of two things: guns in the home, which they have done, and predatory teachers, priests, and scout leaders. What's the message on the latter? So I'll just, if you want to jump in, or if you want to ask a specific part of the question that you want us to chat on, feel free.
Well, I thank you for the tough questions because I like the hard questions. I'll hit on both. Gun safety is something that McGruff has been very active on. We have we had some very cleverly done short videos several years ago, which feature McGruff and his nephew Scruff and their friends. And there's this whole drama about somebody brought a gun to school and what kids need to do. That addresses that. We're going to go even deeper on the gun violence issue soon, I hope. Many years ago, there was a woman who was age 11 when she was part of a McGruff ad on gun violence. Rosanna Brigham is her name. She came forward. We featured her at a conference where she is now a parent. Interestingly enough, she grew up in the Bronx. The day after that commercial was filmed, her leg was hit by a stray bullet. She survived it fine. But as a parent, she's just as worried about her children today. And we hope to have in development a new public service announcement featuring her back then and her now, telling her younger self things that she should have known. So we think it has potential to really be a clever twist in getting people to talk about gun violence, not as something new that was just created, but something that has been around, but is ever more disconcerting for people. On the second half of the question on predators out there in people's lives, a big focus of McGruff's work has always been on keeping kids safe and what to do in situations that are uncomfortable. And we view McGruff as a helper in the true sense of the word that Mr. Rogers told kids about many years ago. When things are really bad, look for a helper. McGruff is a helper. There have always been McGruff safe houses in different locations where a kid could come in and talk. McGruff has always talked about stranger danger, the abduction of children, the harm to children, and what the question more directly relates to. These are people that a child knows. And you do the same thing. It is to encourage a child to be a self-advocate is the first step. To stand up, say something, walk away, and tell a trusting grown-up. And again, that is like, what is in a child's frame of reference? A scout leader, a priest, a teacher, a gym coach, any number of these people are, in a child's eyes, trusted people. And then all of a sudden they do something that violates that trust in the most abhorrent of ways. And the child tends to feel guilty. So we encourage the child not to feel guilty, but to be empowered, to stand up, say something, and walk away, and to make sure they're safe. That's number one. You don't want to encourage a child to do something that would put them further at risk, but you want to do it in a way that encourages them, that tells them they're not wrong. It's the other person who's wrong. Don't blame the victim, blame the criminal.
Yeah. So, and thank you for answering those questions and how you will. I would go just a little deeper to the question on, when you have a figure like McGruff and you're teaching kids that like he's a safe place to go to, safe houses to talk to. you're also teaching those kids that the scout leaders, the priests, the teachers, even though we acknowledge that they can be dangerous, but you're also teaching them by, by association, that these other figures are safe as well. So are the conversations going to go a little bit more, not in depth to the trauma and the abuse talk exactly, but will they go, a little bit more in depth than just like stranger danger, don't get in the car with someone offering candy. We've evolved as a society
Yes.
since the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
We're seeing more documentaries, and we're having to
Yes.
talk to our kids a little bit more. So I just wanted to kind of give you an
Yes,
option to
there
hear.
are two issues, and that they are different, and we are working on ways to develop a conversation that kids can relate to, that distinguishes stranger danger is not the same issue as a gymnastics coach.
Right. Perfect.
They are very different. Stranger is, and I did an interview with somebody in Stockton, California last night, where there have been 2 or 3 incidences in the community where they were very clearly strangers out acting in a predatory way. One of them with a knife and kids, and they were asking for guidance and tips. That is a very different conversation than a parent coming forward saying, "Hey, I don't trust my child's gymnastics coach or the wrestling coach," or something like that. That's something very different. You have a different type of criminal behavior. But the very heart of what the criminal behavior goes to, and it's what McGruff always talks about, no matter the crime, is the last thing a criminal wants is to be called out. They don't want a light shined on them. They want to act in secret. They want to hide. And the most valuable thing that I think McGruff does on any issue is he shines a light. And if you look at how the toughest criminal situations were broken in the world, look at corruption and horrible abuses in Uganda. Look at the mafia in Sicily. The back was broken when the community said enough. And people started looking and really calling people out in a systematic way. And we need to do more of that in this country, because that is what ultimately will take a bite out of crime. And we do it in small little bites, and you can nibble away at it. But if you really, really want to nibble at it, it takes the whole community to say, we've had enough, in a big way.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot more psychology involved in generational things and those things. So it can't obviously be fixed in one way.
Oh,
Of course,
yeah, and there's so
that
many
makes
issues,
sense.
and resources are always limited, and
Yeah, but
I've
I
got a
do
long
see,
list of things I want to do, and
like you're like you have that, like bucket list items always are bigger, of course, and we know that. I did see, I saw some comments here like, that's great, but let's be honest, stranger danger to white people means that cops get called on minorities in the neighborhood, like Trayvon Martin. I'll tell you why I'm bringing these things up, not for the specific comment alone. And then some other things that people have said. One of the things that I've heard you speaking to, and I've just was wondering, is this terminology of criminal. You keep using that word,
Mhm.
criminal. And when I work in certain communities and I work with children and they have parents that have gone to jail or something for something small, they don't see them the same as like someone who's done something really major. And I've wondered if that use of the word criminal is something that you guys do on purpose, or if you've thought about that, because I
I,
guess humanizing a person would be easier to have conversations with kids about things if it didn't feel like they were demonizing people that are around their family members, or people that have gone to jail for something smaller or something, because criminal is a very vast
yes.
term and it can get very tricky for children. Just talking with my own kids,
Mhm.
they don't even like the word criminal being used all the time for certain people, because they're like, well, yeah, but my aunt so and so went to jail once and they're a good person, and using the word criminal really makes it sound like they're just a horrible person. So, have you thought about how that word affects children maybe wanting to speak to people?
Yes. And I use the word in an interview situation like this.
Okay.
Because I think people relate to it, and I'll use it broadly, far more broadly. One thing you will never hear in a McGruff ad is McGruff ever identifying or calling a group out, and that is something that is carefully thought about. Thought about. You think of a 60-second ad; it only has a few sentences in it, but the amount of scrutiny, thought, research that we put in that is very intense. And part of that is a lot of the things that you're talking about from multiple perspectives, from the child psychology perspective, from the law enforcement perspective, from what is it that you ultimately want to do. And then a lot of times we work with experts, and experts like using technical terms, and we have to come up and tell the experts no. I was recently writing something for McGruff a couple weeks ago, and had a couple attorneys look at it and talked about uh, giving crime a chance. And they started re-editing it and saying, "Oh no, you have to use opportunity and all these other bigger words." And I was like, "No, that's the problem. You have to break it down in very simple terms." And that is part of the history of McGruff. While McGruff has a sleeker, newer, modern look, the one thing that is constant with McGruff is the ability to talk to people in a way they can relate to. So, depending on who that audience is, we do very careful focus group research and other types of research, so that we understand that's what they relate to. And those are the terms McGruff will speak in.
Thank
So
you
your
so
point
much
is
for
very
going in
good.
depth.
And like I said, in an interview situation like this, I will throw around terms more loosely than maybe I should or shouldn't. But anyway, that's the way it is. But when we are writing a McGruff PSA, it takes months to finalize that script.
Yeah, I imagine. Thank you so much for going in depth on that and hanging in there with us on these questions.
They're great questions.
Definitely. Any chance McGruff might be around somewhere at some point? We can have him back on the show, maybe, or he can give us a shout out on Twitter.
There's a chance of that. There's a chance of that. McGruff had a very busy week last week,
Ooh,
or the week before. We've got a great. There was an internet influencer on YouTube who did a great show, A Day in the Life of McGruff, where it
nice.
started with McGruff waking up and brushing his teeth, because you need good teeth to take a bite out of crime. And it was
There you go.
very delightful episode. We want to be doing more and more of that.
Okay. Quick question. Final question, and we're going to cut you loose for the night. But in a WWE fight, who wins, Smokey the Bear or McGruff the Crime Dog?
Oh, come on, that's not even a fair question. You'd feel bad for Smokey.
Oh my
Oh my
God.
goodness. That was the funny one for me. I'm a big Smokey the Bear fan because I grew up in the mountains and I loved camping, so I was just like always into that. But the trench coat, McGruff, just in these last moments, because I didn't get to be here for the first part. McGruff for me as a kid, not knowing stuff, I did have a warmth. There was, I looked forward to seeing someone come in and sort of just give us a break and talk to us. So I think anything that you can, do to get in front of kids and give them breaks and give them someone that a dog especially, like kids love animals and they can't always have them at their house. So just anything that you guys can do to go into the communities and be a part of things. I'm just going to say this as my last thought, that isn't just for, and I know it's not just for optics, but that isn't just perceived as just for optics as a brand, but actually going into the community, sitting with kids, not just for a photo op, but actually being there, I think would do wonders as well. I don't know if you guys have clones of him that you can maybe have travel around at some point, because I know you have that big list you got to get to, and everything has to be prioritized. But it does wonders for kids when they see more personal, humanized type figures take the time to show up and be there at their schools, even if they're not like the most high priority school that's going to get the most photographs and all of that. So hope
Well,
that you guys have that in play.
we do have that in play, and I think the best way to see more of it is for people to be engaged. So if you're a parent out there and you ask your kid, has McGruff been to your classroom? Call your principal, and they say no. Call the principal, call the local police department. Say you need McGruff in their school. Enough parents do that, you're going to see more McGruff.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. Pick up the phone, call them. We have more McGruff costumes than people who are buying them, so there won't be a shortage. We have the educational material. We have the training available, so they know how to do it in the right way. There are, and we need more of it. So thank you for bringing that up, and for.
So maybe we can add something to Twitter that allows parents to know, this is the way that you go about getting them
put pressure
to your.
on.
So we'll send out a tweet, just kind of
Thanks.
bringing
The
awareness to
squeaky
that.
wheel
Thanks
gets
for
the
letting
grease.
us know the process.
Yeah. And finally, Paul, give us all of McGruff's social media contacts for our listeners.
Okay. At McGruff, at NCPC on Twitter, Facebook. You go to any of them, you'll search them. Come to our website, ncpc.org. You'll get them all. TikTok, search McGruff. He's there. You will laugh. I promise you that.
Wonderful. Paul Del Ponte, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And good luck.
And that was Paul Del Ponte, the spokesperson for McGruff the Crime Dog. Man, that was exciting.
Yeah, I felt like I was like talking about my childhood in different ways. It was kind of weird to think back to my childhood and then be like, oh, from a parent standpoint, let me think about the questions that would be important right now. Very interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I think he might be McGruff. I gotta. I think he might be McGruff. I mean, look.
Did we just get to hear from McGruff without knowing that we did?
The voice
no one say anything. Like, it's just between us. Don't tell anyone.
It's in the voice. Well, since you're here later, let's go into the breakdown. It's our current event section. What we got going on this week? Student loans. President Biden is forgiving some student loans, man, which I need, by the way. So let's see. President Biden announced on Wednesday his plans to address student loan debt, which includes debt forgiveness for certain borrowers and extending the pandemic-related payment pause. The Biden administration has already canceled nearly $32 billion of the $1.6 trillion in outstanding federal student loan debt by expanding existing forgiveness programs for public sector workers, disabled borrowers, and students who were defrauded by for-profit colleges. So that's amazing. You can go to, I believe it's student. Wait a minute. I want to get it right. There's a website, and I do not want our followers to go astray on this. It is studentaid.gov/debt forgiveness. If you go there, you can apply, and it says like if you got under $10,000 in student debt, stop paying immediately. It's going to be forgiven.
Yeah, definitely had some family members and people who that was like a huge load off of. When I went to college, I got scholarships, so I've never understood. I don't know what that feeling has been like, but I can imagine just it hanging over your head. So that's awesome. I'm very excited for anyone who can do that. Oh, thank you so much, Zelda. It's the lighting. I promise it's the lighting. I love a good how do you call it? There's a method. I'll come up with it. It's a 2 ring lights and you place it from 2 sides, and it's actually the best it's the most flattering for all types of people. Instead of a ring light that just goes in the front, it comes from 2 sides. So just saying. Yeah.
You told me something about an influencer that that piqued my interest today. What exactly happened?
Yeah, Gabby Hanna. So for those of you that don't know her, most people do in some regards. They've seen her probably across, if they're millennial, Gen Z. She started out on Vine years ago. She got big. She's had a couple cancel culture kind of scares where she's said some things and she's made her way back. As of yesterday, she started posting, really outlandish sort of TikToks. It has people thinking that she's in currently in a psychotic break. Um, Definitely having some issues with. She started talking about a lot of religious things, claiming that she's God, claiming that she's created the hell, claiming that she's the person that's going to be that's Jesus right now. She let a stranger into her home. She's at, I think, 173 TikToks, which is something I'll speak to in a second. That has me absolutely angry that they're allowing this to happen. So she is most known on Twitter for a rant that she went into during this psychotic break. It's not an excuse. This is a very complicated issue, but during this mental thing, maybe drugs, we're not exactly sure. We're just, contemplating it, not contemplating, speculating. But 173 TikToks later, there's so many different things going on. And she had a rant. I personally won't post the video because I don't want to keep it going. I don't want to trigger anyone. But it had a lot of racist content in it. She didn't think it was racist. She actually thought she was, I guess in her mind, she thought she was like speaking up for the community she was talking against. Highly racist behavior, and that is continued over into today. Talking about that, she's a woman of color. When yesterday she was claiming that she's white, but now she's person of color today because she's Middle Eastern. And then she's many other things. The videos are really intense. Like she's, she looks like this the whole time because her hand is shaking so bad. I personally, I don't engage these things from a place of finding any joy or entertainment. She was trending on and under Twitter under entertainment. I don't find that to be entertainment. People were calling. Most of the comments have, if you look at them, most have been in concern for her health. She let this stranger come into her home. Then she kind of backtracked and was like, this man broke into my house, even though she was dancing with him, hanging out with him. She would definitely let him in. But then on the other side, she feels traumatized that he was in her home. So you're seeing two levels, and I'll get your thoughts on it. There's three levels. There's people who have no compassion for her at all. Like she chose what she did. This is what she did. She chose all of it, whatever the case may be. Then you have people who are very compassionate, like mental health episode, drugs, no matter what. Get her some help, please. No one deserves what's going to happen and what's going on. She shouldn't be doing it anyway. And then people who are like me, who are in the middle, who are just like, ugh, I have compassion. And then I'm just really stuck on some things that I just don't know how to reconcile, because she said some things that are definitely going to be hurtful and going to make some people feel like they can say them and engage with things. And she perpetuates some stereotypes. So yeah, it's kind of tricky, but watching it play out has been kind of scary, and definitely made me have some conversations with my children.
Yeah, after you mentioned it to me earlier, I went and watched. I saw someone in trouble. Damn the racist comments. Okay. I've seen people have mental breakdowns and walk around and say, I'm God, and say all kinds of things come flying out of their mouth. Okay. So I'm not a knee-jerk reaction guy. I'm like, oh my God, she said that. Because, even when we allow words to control our emotions, we allow people to control us. That we can't be slaves to words. So I don't care if someone says the N-word or whatever. Context is always key to me. Okay. Something like that, like someone with Tourette syndrome, would you fault them for saying curses just out of the blue? You say, oh, well, that person has Tourette.
I mean, I hope not, because I have Tourette's, so let's hope not.
So, so why, if someone's having a mental breakdown, and you're right, it may be some drugs. I don't know. Okay,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't
it
know
does
enough
look like a
about it.
mix.
Yeah, but where's the compassion? My God.
And for the middle people, like I was saying, I want to clarify. So, I wasn't saying I want my opinion to be on the record. I fall in the I see a person in help in need. Um, what I was more speaking to is the discomfort in the middle area that I'm in is the man. There's going to be people who saw the video and not know that she was in a mental health episode and think that they can say some stuff. So just to be clear, not judging what she says, what's happening, any of that, more so just like, dang, this is not a good situation because people have clipped that one TikTok video and a lot of people don't see that she's going through, they don't follow her. They just saw the video on Twitter and they're like, "Oh, this is this girl who's just saying some crazy stuff." So that was what I was really, kind of saddened by, which is anytime we take something out of context and we use it as we exploit the situation, which I do believe people are exploiting her situation for their own content creation right now. That I'm not gonna vibe with that. I'm not gonna be okay with that. And that was the discomfort I was saying in that middle area of like, ooh, like, but also on the people on the side where people didn't know she was going through a mental breakdown, we're like, she can't just say that. I understood that too, but yeah, this breakdown, her dad is on his way to get her. The last things that she had posted before I got on was that her dad was going to come to get her. She was laughing uncontrollably about some topics, and it was definitely that mental breakdown laugh. I don't care who you are, you can hear it. And also, I think if anyone knows a lot of, psychology, it's actually pretty common for people to have some sort of spiritual awakening, like God complex, before a psychotic episode or a manic episode. So it's actually like a sign of that becoming a psychotic episode. Because if they've ever been religious, read the Bible, it just sort of comes out, God complexes. So she did state that she had created a hell, and she kept also kind of pointing out that the cops let her down. She said there was a one where she said, like, yeah, the police showed up, they did, and then she said DID, which is the way that people refer to dissociative disorder. So she
Mm.
said DID, and then she says, if they want some feedback on, I'm just paraphrasing, if they want feedback on how to actually do a wellness check, I'll give them feedback. She was basically saying, you didn't do a good job because I'm still here. They came back today and she explains, they said, can you just post a video saying you're okay so people will stop calling us? That's what they told her. And she said, well, will you give me a hug? She called them the three wise men. Again, these religious references. She said, I asked wise man one, will you give me a hug? He said, no. Wise man two, will you give me a hug? No. Three, no. And she said, so the very thing that I said could help me with my wellness check, they didn't want to give it to me. Not saying that they needed to give her a hug. There's so many things that could be implicated there, of course, for them. But it's clear that she was trying to let her followers know, I've asked for people to help me. And no matter if I'm out of it or not, they're not giving me the help in the way that I would like it, or I would need it. So I hope her dad has made contact. Um, I was going to check just really quickly while we're on here, just to kind of see. Um, and, her name on TikTok, sadly, is Trauma Queen. So that's even, I think that's sad to me as well, because clearly she has trauma. Yeah, it looks like since she posted hours ago, her dad was coming to get her. There's been nothing else. So
Okay.
hopefully, but she went offline for 7 hours yesterday. She did say she was awakened by police, so she could be asleep. But like, the best thing we can hope for is that people have gotten to her. I did a Twitter space show on this last night, just bringing awareness to social media and fame, and like people perceiving everybody as having their lives together, but how we've seen it with Britney, we've seen it with many stars where it got to be too much. And I said it to people last night. Those of you that are laughing, making fun of her, were you on the Free Britney movement just about 6 months ago and probably made fun of Britney back when it was all funny to do so, but then you flipped the script when you realized that she was going through some mental postpartum bipolar? So I'm wondering, when as a society do we hold ourselves accountable in the moment and go, it's not okay to find it funny and laugh with my friends right now and post the memes that is going to destroy someone and then say sorry later, you know?
Yeah.
So I've tried not to perpetuate it, won't share any links. But I did do the space to bring awareness in a time that she was trending. And someone asked me to do a space again tonight before this. And I said, absolutely not, because that is when we get into exploitation. So we brought it as awareness last night. But if you continue to build your content over this woman's meltdown, I think that's exploitation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, especially with the Britney. At first, it was like Britney's crazy. Britney's this, Britney, and the guys leave Britney alone and all this other stuff. And then they say Britney's coming out and she tells her story, what she's been through. Oh my gosh! And now they flip flop. I mean, there's nothing better for certain people than to build someone up so they can throw rocks at them and tear them down.
Right.
And so that it's the nature of social media, unfortunately, oftentimes. And you know, it's sad to see. And I wish her the best.
Yeah.
Finally, the Justice Department was ordered by a judge to release a redacted version of like the search warrant and a list of things that were taken from Mar-a-Lago, the affidavit at least. And funny enough, Donald Trump released to a reporter a short list of some of the stuff they was taking. Like, yeah, they came in here and they stole this stuff. And the reporter, who was actually a Donald Trump friendly reporter, was like, I don't think you're supposed to have this stuff. Like, this is like a confession. Like, you saying this is what they took. You have this stuff, and they're like, yeah, these are things you aren't supposed to have. Why do you have these things? So it's starting to be a big mess.
It's always, everything with this dude is a mess. You can't get anything. There's nothing that's not a mess with this dude. Even like court, even like Justice Department stuff, like his presidency. You can't not have a mess involved with this guy. And I think that's by design. He's still actively running his reality show that we were all just observers of for a while. Hopefully it will end at some point. But so this is from The Guardian. I was just going to read this for those who may not know the fullness of it. The federal judge ordered Thursday that the affidavit justifying the search warrant used to seize sensitive government documents from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida earlier this month should be partly unsealed, according to redactions proposed by the Justice Department. The order from Judge Bruce Reinhart, who's approved the FBI search warrant and is overseeing the case, instructed the Justice Department to release a redacted version of the affidavit that he had reviewed before noon on Friday. In a two-part ruling, the judge said the Justice Department's proposed redactions were specifically restricted to keep secret grand jury material, the identities of uncharged individuals and sources and methods used in the criminal investigation, and the remainder could be public. And then I'll end with this quote. The government has met its burden of showing that its proposed redactions are narrowly tailored to serve the government's legitimate interest in the integrity of the ongoing investigation and are the least onerous alternative to sealing the entire affidavit, Reinhart wrote. So it's supposedly, expected to contain key information, as you were talking about, notably the probable cause about the Justice Department's investigation into all of this. And then no one knows how much it'll be redacted and all of that. So that's just interesting that you would do that and want to protect certain names and things.
You know what that tells me, Kim? There are people in Donald Trump's camp talking. There are people on SYA mode. Like, there are people who gave information who said, okay, I'm going to tell you, this guy's got some nuclear codes or something. I don't know what it is,
Whatever.
but we have it. But I don't want him coming after me.
Exactly.
Because his people are nuts.
Oh,
The
everywhere.
They're crazy. So if because the first thing Donald Trump is going to do, just like he did the vice president, when he turned on the vice president, they were outside of the Capitol
Exactly.
saying, "Hang Mike Pence, hang," and they bust in the Capitol. So I'm Joe Schmo from Kokomo. I don't want them
Yeah.
coming after me. I don't have Secret Service protection.
No. So that's what stood out to me is if this is like, it wasn't that they said something like, we want it redacted for national security purposes over here. It was names, how they obtained the methods they obtained the information. That's quote unquote snitching, not in a bad way for us, thank God. But what I'm saying is like, that's his friend snitching on him. That's the methods. I mean, we don't have to get all technical. Just his friends are snitching. So they got to cover up situations. So because I think it's like, I'll tell you, but you got to protect me because you saw what he did. I mean, think about it. I'm Trump's friend, okay? And I'm like, dude, I'm not going down with this shit. But also, I just saw what he did with this insurrection stuff. If he could do that to the Capitol and he had police overtaken, I know my little 5-bedroom house over here is not going to be protected by all this. I get that. So we can speculate a lot, but interesting stuff going on. And this guy is not going to stop. I mean, I talk about woo-woo manifestation kind of stuff in my life. You've probably seen me in passing on Twitter Spaces. I talk about manifestation and energy and whatever, speaking it into existence. This man is, I mean, his delusion is so strong that I think he is like able to manifest so easily people following him and cult followings because he believes his delusion. So it's that whole, like, if you believe you can receive it, he took that to a whole nother level, like law of attraction and manifestation. He took it to a whole nother level and was like, well, I'll just go into delusion and I'll believe whatever I want. And then I'll bring all these people with me. And it's happened so far. So I would imagine being scared if I was a frenemy that turned.
Definitely. It's like the first 48. Somebody sitting in the police station with a chicken butt. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that show.
I'm like, somebody's definitely snitching, and hey, I'm there for it. I can't wait to see how this plays out. And it's the funniest thing about it is the part that they have talked about in court is the fact that how he's blaming Joe Biden. Everything indicators is like right now that Joe Biden said, I don't want any part of this. If you're going to go after him, I want it to be your decision. I want you to go to a jail. I don't want any part of this because I don't want it to look like I'm trying to take out a political opponent. And so he stepped back from the whole thing and allowed this whole thing to transpire however it was going to work. And then they showed that the National Archives sent Donald Trump several messages, and they gave this guy opportunities. Just bring the stuff back. Just bring it back. And they said after a while, it was clear he wasn't going to return that stuff. And then Donald Trump Jr. says, "Well, my dad likes to collect memorabilia." They're making a big deal about this. He collects pins.
Gaslighting.
And yeah, exactly. Maybe he took a cup from the things just to commemorate nuclear codes. Nothing important. Nothing he could sell to Russia.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's so just outlandish that you would think that they're making a big deal over you taking a coffee mug, bro. Like, nobody cares that you took the Oval Office like pin pad. Like, they'll charge you on that later, like the hotel does. Like, we're good on that. You took a pillowcase. Okay, we got that. But what did you take that we need to worry about going to Russia? What do we need to worry about, like, you messing up? Because what we do know is dude is infamous for wanting to be infamous. Like that he doesn't care. He has that mentality. Like, if it's not going to go in the way he wants it, then he doesn't need everybody to love him. He just needs millions of people to love him. And that's something I think we're missing. And I don't mean you and I, but the proverbial we sometimes miss about him is that we go, can't he see how many people hate him? Equally as many people love him, though. So he's just focusing on that. I mean, think about it. If you got people in your family and like 50% are like, I love you, Dino. And then some other one's like, I don't like you. You're going to be like, well, I'm going to go hang out with the people that love me and my family. It's just, he's going to focus on the group that loves him that obsess about him, that still give him airtime. I mean, I've never seen somebody live outstay their welcome in every capacity. Dude tried to not leave the White House. Like, he was like, no, like tenant laws. I'm here. What's it called? Like when someone doesn't leave, and they have rights and they're there because
Squatter.
squatter. Like, this dude was like, I'm just gonna be a squatter at the White House. Oh, okay. I mean, I'm not surprised with anything with him anymore, but you know what I will say, and I'm just gonna go on record saying this. I don't, if somebody does not stop him, I am very concerned that we will have more people harmed.
Yes.
For sure. Because he attracts people that are educated. Want to be clear on that. We know that everybody who follows Donald Trump is not stupid and not educated, because then some people will come at us and say, you're not hearing the whole thing. But there are some people that are not well in certain ways, and they take things too far. And, we've seen that. So I just, I have bigger concern for the people who, if he does find out that people told certain things, then I am concerned. So I think the next 2 years will be interesting in finding out if people start missing, people start, having car accidents, heart
Yeah.
attacks.
Yeah, and as a social media expert, you know that CNN, they run a Donald Trump story every day. And they could be saying, Donald Trump is crazy. Donald Trump is all Donald Trump is Donald Trump. They're talking about me. So it doesn't matter that we hate him, because like even you and I, we're talking about him.
Yep. And I was talking about this last night. I was like, how do you reconcile giving attention to someone while trying to bring awareness about what crazy shit they're doing? It is a really tough line to walk. And I know you are similar probably. I have a very insane love-hate relationship with social media, with news, with anything really. The dichotomy, the yin and yang of the universe. It just is how it is sometimes. But I think at some point, it's like with school shooters or mass shooters, I loathe when somebody posts their photo. Don't show their face. Same thing for Donald Trump. If you need to bring it up, we're not posting his photo right now to talk about him. Other people, other stations will post Donald Trump's photo. He just wants to see his photo on the news. If you need to say his name, do that. But you can mitigate how much attention you're giving him by not showing a face. Because guess what he does? He looks on there and he goes, "Oh, I look good. That was a good suit." He's so delusional. He's like, "Oh, my hair looked good. That was nice. They picked a good photo." So we have to stop, perpetuating that. And I think that a lot of independent media has done a great job, as while they're talking about the situation, not posting his photo so that that narcissism is not triggered for him.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, mainstream media, they will do. And remember this, kids, because McGruff, the crime dog, was on earlier, or his spokesperson, which we really think is him. But I think that we need to remember that even the news that we prefer or we trust a little more is not necessarily good. They're still looking for ratings. They're still looking to get their sponsors, their commercials. They're not there for us. That's a very skewed message. They're there for ratings, money. At the end of the day, they get paid. And without anything to do with Donald Trump right now, things get kind of boring. And they all saw that when Donald Trump was running for the presidency, got the presidency, lost the presidency. So they understand that continuing his narrative is beneficial for them. So when people go, I don't understand why we're still talking about him. Well, we understand why we shouldn't, but mainstream media needs those numbers because they're competing with Netflix, Hulu's, Paramount. Everybody's got a streaming service right now. Amazon, Disney, 7-Eleven probably is going to get one by the end of the year. I don't know, but that's really what's going on. So we need to have we need to have those conversations within ourselves of, I acknowledge what's going on, but like I said with the Gabby thing last night, I used the situation, and I'll go ahead and say that it was using the situation last night to bring awareness. But beyond that, I could have kept talking, could have kept the topic all day today on a Twitter space, gaining followers, getting people in. But that would be going the wrong direction. So beyond awareness and action, you have to decide, how much am I a part of the problem now? So great to talk about it, bring awareness to some of these things. But then beyond that, you got to have to say, not going to continue this. And CNN and those channels, they're constantly putting him up. And that's different than you and I having like a 15-minute conversation.
Yes. Well, I am Dino Moore. She is
Kimberly K.
And this has been Breaking Barriers. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much for holding it down while I was having tech issues. So glad that I'm here with you. This has been great. And I know we had some, on Twitter, are we doing part 2 of the LGBTQ thing?
We are. We got people are
tell them about
lining
that?
up to come. Oh my gosh. It won't be next week. We got like it's coming, guys.
coming.
I know it was an overwhelming response, and
And the
your daughter.
representation is there.
Oh my gosh, your
We will
daughter
have
blessed
guys.
us with her presence. Thank you
You too.
for her and my daughter, and
Oh,
we
she's lovely.
we done good. We done good,
We
Kim.
did.
So, guys, keep your ears open. We will post when our next show is going to be the same time next week, and we'll post the topic. And
by the end of this week, you will be able to find us. We are going to start Instagram, so you'll be able to see some of these. You'll be able to see some of our videos reviewed. We'll put them in reels. You can share them around Instagram with your friends. So Instagram, we will have that. So we'll be posting that on the Twitter, the Dig on America Twitter. So we'll be posting our social media, I guess, handles for Breaking Barriers.
Yes.
We also have some new artwork coming out for the podcast and our promotional stuff. Super excited about that. And we also can be found, obviously, under the Dig on America. If you want to find us all the places, it's under Dig on America. So Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. My Twitter that people keep asking about is Dear Kimberly K. Dino, what was yours?
Dino Moore Films.
Perfect.
So Dino Moore makes
send us
films.
messages there. If you have any, this is one thing that we forgot. If you have anything that you feel is an uncomfortable conversation that you would like us to do, be comfortable having for you, please send us DMs. We are open to many topics. If there are any guests that you would like to have us on, if there's anybody you would like us to interview, please write us in the DMs, either on Dig on America or at Dear Kimberly K and Dino Moore Films on Twitter. And we also will we'll have an email for you soon so that you can contact us about guests. So we're just in the early stages, guys, but we do have some really great things coming. So this week we will let you know what those other social media platforms look like. But so far, we're really enjoying all the feedback, and thanks for hanging out with us every week. Thanks, Dino.
Thank all of you guys, and good night.